Ethan sat at his desk, finishing routine reports, when his email notification pinged with a message from Miranda Hale. His heart sank slightly as he read the subject line, "Immediate attention required." She needed him to handle a critical issue that had just emerged in a high-profile project. The urgency was clear, and the potential consequences of failure loomed over him. As a single father, Ethan knew staying late would mean rearranging family responsibilities, yet he couldn't ignore the request. He quickly gathered the preliminary documents, scanning the problem details. Miranda's instructions were precise, but hinted at layers of complexity only someone deeply familiar with the project could unravel. Ethan's mind raced, calculating the time required and mentally prioritizing tasks. The weight of responsibility pressed on him, knowing that the company's reputation and the project's success now rested partially on his shoulders. The office was quiet, most colleagues having left for the evening. The hum of computers and the faint flicker of fluorescent lights created a sterile, tense atmosphere. Ethan's focus sharpened as he plotted his strategy, reviewing previous data and analyzing patterns. He knew that any misstep could have repercussions, not only professionally, but potentially affecting his credibility with Miranda, a boss whose expectations were notoriously exacting. Miranda stopped by briefly, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She offered no further instructions, but looked at him with a gaze that combined authority and quiet expectation. Ethan felt a jolt of nervous energy, aware that her observation carried weight. He nodded in acknowledgement, sensing that his performance tonight would shape her perception of his competence and reliability in ways far beyond the immediate task. He settled into a rhythm, tackling each component methodically. The hours stretched, punctuated by the occasional sip of cold coffee and the rhythmic tapping of his keyboard. His mind oscillated between problem-solving and imagining the potential fallout if the solution failed. Even with the clock ticking relentlessly, Ethan's determination strengthened, fueled by both professional pride and a sense of obligation to Miranda and the project. Occasionally, he glanced at his phone, thinking about his young daughter waiting at home. The tug of family responsibilities, mixed with the pressure of corporate duty, created a sharp tension inside him. Ethan reminded himself why he worked hard and why he couldn't shy away from this moment. Solving the problem efficiently was not just about his career. It was a measure of his ability to balance professional excellence with the demands of being a devoted parent. Hours passed, and the office became even quieter as the night deepened. Ethan leaned back, stretching briefly, feeling the fatigue in his shoulders and the sharp focus in his mind. He reviewed his plan, anticipating possible complications and preparing contingency steps. Each adjustment he made required careful thought, attention to detail, and the mental agility to foresee challenges before they emerged. The responsibility was immense, yet it also invigorated him. Finally, as the city lights outside glittered against the dark skyline, Ethan began assembling the final solution. Every calculation, every email, and every strategy converged into a coherent plan. Despite exhaustion, a sense of satisfaction crept in. He had risen to the challenge. Miranda's earlier gaze, filled with expectation, now lingered in his mind, fueling a determination not just to meet it, but to exceed it. The night was long, but Ethan was ready to prove his capabilities. Ethan leaned over his laptop, the glow of the screen casting sharp shadows across his tired face. Reports and spreadsheets were spread across his desk like a battlefield, each figure and line demanding meticulous attention. He cross-referenced data, recalculated forecasts, and mentally mapped possible solutions. The office was silent except for the occasional hum of the air conditioning, making each keystroke echo in the vast, dimly lit space. He paused to stretch, rubbing his neck, feeling the strain of hours hunched over. Despite fatigue, Ethan's mind remained razor-sharp. He knew that one miscalculation could unravel hours of work, undermining both the project and his credibility with Miranda. Every decision required careful thought, weighing not just efficiency, but potential consequences that could ripple through the company and affect his reputation. Periodically, Ethan's phone vibrated with messages from colleagues offering updates or questions. He responded concisely, keeping communication professional yet reassuring, balancing collaboration with maintaining control over the solution's execution. Each interaction reminded him of the stakes, heightening his sense of responsibility and focus. His determination was fueled not only by career ambition, but by the knowledge that Miranda relied on his competence. Miranda appeared at the doorway silently, observing without interruption. Her heels clicked softly on the polished floor, and her presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. She offered no explicit guidance, but nodded subtly in acknowledgement of Ethan's progress. Her gaze carried both authority and a quiet, almost imperceptible appreciation, making Ethan acutely aware that his performance tonight was being measured on multiple levels. The night deepened, and the city outside shimmered with distant lights, a reminder of life continuing beyond the office walls. Ethan glanced briefly at the skyline, feeling the isolation of the moment, yet also a surge of determination. He was alone in the quiet battle of numbers and strategy, yet acutely conscious of the eyes watching him. Miranda's subtle presence, a constant, silent pressure that drove him to focus even harder. Coffee in hand, Ethan tackled the final segments of the task, checking every assumption and recalculating each projection. He juggled multiple scenarios, envisioning how clients, executives, and stakeholders might react to each decision. The mental load was immense, yet he felt a quiet satisfaction in his methodical approach. He reminded himself that diligence, precision, and persistence were the only ways to succeed under scrutiny. Time seemed to stretch infinitely as Ethan adjusted formulas, composed reports, and finalized recommendations. Every detail mattered, from the clarity of charts to the phrasing of conclusions. Despite exhaustion creeping into his limbs, his mind remained alert, fueled by a mix of adrenaline, responsibility, and a desire to impress Miranda. The quiet intensity of the office created a strange intimacy between him and the work, as if the night itself was a test of endurance. Finally, with the documents compiled and strategies clearly mapped, Ethan leaned back, letting out a long, controlled breath. He reviewed his work one last time, mentally running through potential questions or objections. Miranda appeared once more, her eyes meeting his with a subtle nod of approval. Ethan felt a complex mix of relief, pride, and anticipation, aware that the late-night effort had not only solved the immediate problem, but also earned recognition in a way that might shift the dynamics between him and his boss forever. Ethan submitted the final reports just before midnight, double-checking each calculation and ensuring all data was clearly presented. He leaned back in his chair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief wash over him. The potential crisis had been averted, and the weight of responsibility that had pressed so heavily now lifted slightly. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smile, knowing that the solution was thorough and well-structured. Miranda entered the office quietly, her presence both commanding and unexpectedly personal. She studied the documents for a moment, then looked up at Ethan with a genuine expression of admiration. "Ethan, this is exceptional work," she said, her voice carrying warmth that went beyond professional acknowledgement. Her words caught him off guard, making him suddenly aware of the intensity in her gaze. Ethan felt a flicker of unease, mixed with pride. Miranda's gratitude was unusually intimate for a workplace setting. He had handled challenging tasks before, yet he had never received such personal attention from her. He shifted in his chair, unsure how to respond without appearing presumptuous or overly formal. The room seemed smaller, charged with an unspoken energy he couldn't quite name. She stepped closer, leaning lightly on the edge of his desk. "I've watched how you approach this, your attention to detail, your initiative. It's remarkable." Ethan nodded politely, aware that her compliment carried weight far beyond the task itself. He noticed subtle changes in her expression, fleeting smiles that hinted at something more personal than professional praise. The intensity of the moment made Ethan's pulse quicken. He tried to focus on the achievement itself, on the fact that he had prevented a major problem for the company, but it was difficult to ignore Miranda's proximity and the tone of her words. Every acknowledgement she offered seemed layered, suggesting admiration that went deeper than gratitude for a job well done. Ethan cleared his throat, maintaining professionalism while feeling a strange curiosity about her behavior. "Thank you, Miranda. I'm glad everything's resolved," he said carefully, balancing humility with pride. Her eyes held his a moment longer than expected, leaving him with the sense that this encounter was a turning point, one that could redefine the boundaries of their relationship. She gave a small, almost imperceptible smile, then stepped back slightly. "You've earned more than just acknowledgement tonight," she said softly, her voice carrying an edge of intrigue. Ethan's mind raced, processing the implication without jumping to conclusions. The words lingered in the air, charged with ambiguity, leaving him both flustered and intrigued by her intentions. As Miranda exited the office, Ethan exhaled, feeling a mixture of relief, confusion, and anticipation. The project was complete, the crisis averted, but the evening had shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. Her attention, unusually warm and personal, left him wondering what her next move might be and how it could change the dynamics between them in the days to come. Miranda gestured for Ethan to follow her into her private office, a quiet space separated from the hum of the main floor. The door closed softly behind them, and the dimmed lighting made the room feel intimate, almost charged. Ethan's heart raced slightly, aware that this conversation carried more weight than a simple project review. He tried to steady his breathing, reminding himself to maintain professionalism. She motioned for him to sit, then took a seat across from him, her eyes never leaving his face. "Ethan, I wanted to speak with you alone to go over your work," she began, her tone calm yet deliberate. Each word carried a subtle intensity, suggesting that this discussion was about more than just numbers and reports. Ethan nodded, unsure whether to anticipate critique or praise. Miranda leaned forward slightly, her fingers resting on the polished desk. "The way you handled this situation demonstrates remarkable resourcefulness. Your attention to detail and foresight were exactly what we needed," she said, her voice warm. Ethan felt a twinge of unease. Her praise seemed unusually personal, as if she were evaluating him in a way that transcended professional boundaries. He tried to respond with measured humility. "Thank you, Miranda. I just tried to follow the process and anticipate potential issues," he said, keeping his tone neutral. Yet he couldn't ignore the subtle undertones in her words and gaze, a tension that suggested admiration beyond professional respect. Every glance she cast seemed intentional, drawing him into a complex mix of curiosity and caution. Miranda's expression softened for a brief moment, a fleeting smile that seemed to hold more meaning than the words themselves. "You have a unique way of approaching challenges, Ethan. It's not often I see someone think this clearly under pressure," she continued. The office, quiet except for the distant hum of the building, amplified the intimacy of her voice and the lingering weight of her observation. Ethan shifted slightly in his chair, aware of the charged atmosphere. He reminded himself that this was his boss and that professional boundaries were crucial. Yet her compliments and the subtle warmth in her tone left him momentarily disarmed. He found himself listening more carefully, analyzing not only the words but the intent behind them, trying to interpret the line between admiration and something more personal. She leaned back, her gaze still holding his, and let a brief silence settle between them. The quietness seemed to stretch, each second heightening the unspoken tension. Ethan's mind raced, balancing professionalism with the unexpected intimacy of the moment. He realized this conversation was a turning point, one that could influence both their professional and personal dynamic. Finally, Miranda spoke again, her tone lightening slightly, though still charged with subtle implication. "I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate your effort tonight, Ethan. It doesn't go unnoticed," she said, her eyes locking with his. Ethan nodded, acknowledging the compliment, while feeling the weight of its meaning. He left the office with a mix of pride, curiosity, and uncertainty, aware that the evening had shifted their relationship in ways he hadn't anticipated. Ethan walked back to his desk slowly, the office now quiet, except for the faint hum of the air conditioning. Miranda's words echoed in his mind, warm and unexpectedly personal. He tried to focus on his remaining tasks, but every glance at the empty chairs and dim lights reminded him of the private conversation. Her attention lingered like a shadow, impossible to ignore. He sank into his chair, rubbing his temples as he tried to sort his thoughts. Professional boundaries had always been clear to him, yet Miranda's behavior blurred the line. Her compliments, her subtle smiles, and the way she had lingered in the office made him question the nature of their interaction. Ethan felt a mix of pride, confusion, and a cautious intrigue. Ethan's mind drifted to the ethics of the situation. Was it appropriate to notice her personal attention, or was that already crossing a line? He recalled the stories of workplace complications he had read about or witnessed, situations where admiration or attraction led to gossip or career risks. The awareness of potential consequences added weight to his thoughts, making every emotion feel heavier. He also considered the dynamics of their workplace. Miranda was his superior, someone who held authority over his projects, performance reviews, and opportunities. Ethan knew that any misstep could jeopardize not only his credibility, but also his career growth. Yet, the intensity of her attention created a tension that was difficult to ignore, making him question whether he was reading too much into simple appreciation. His thoughts then shifted to personal feelings he hadn't expected to consider. Was it possible he was beginning to feel something more than respect for Miranda? Ethan shook his head slightly, trying to dismiss the notion. As a single father, he had little time for personal distractions, and yet the warmth in her tone and the lingering gaze seemed to ignite a curiosity he couldn't easily ignore. Ethan glanced at his phone, thinking about his daughter and the responsibilities waiting for him at home. The juxtaposition of his parental duties and the complicated attention from Miranda created a complex emotional tangle. He felt torn between the need to maintain professionalism and the pull of human curiosity, the desire to understand the subtle signals she was giving him. He ran through scenarios in his head, imagining how he should respond to future interactions. Should he maintain strict boundaries or acknowledge the subtle warmth she offered while keeping the relationship professional? Every option seemed fraught with tension and uncertainty, highlighting the delicate balance he needed to navigate between ethics, attraction, and career considerations. Finally, Ethan exhaled slowly, recognizing that he couldn't resolve his feelings immediately. The night's work was complete. The crisis had been averted, but the emotional complexity left him unsettled. He realized that the evening had changed something in their dynamic, creating questions and possibilities he hadn't anticipated, and that navigating this new territory would require careful thought, patience, and self-awareness. Ethan noticed a shift in Miranda's behavior over the next few days. She began requesting short, informal meetings under the guise of discussing ongoing projects. Each invitation was phrased professionally, yet the timing and tone carried subtle undertones that made Ethan pause. He felt the fine line between professional duty and personal attention begin to blur. During one after-hours discussion, Miranda suggested reviewing a proposal over coffee in the empty office lounge. Ethan hesitated, aware that it was technically part of work, but sensed that the invitation carried more weight. The quiet of the office, combined with her calm gaze, made the meeting feel strangely intimate, leaving him unsure how to act without misreading the situation. At first, Ethan maintained his composure, responding politely and professionally, yet he couldn't ignore the small gestures, lingering smiles, light touches on documents, or her attentiveness to every detail of his explanations. The subtle attention created a tension in the room, a push and pull between acknowledging her interest and maintaining clear boundaries. Ethan found himself thinking about these interactions long after they ended. He analyzed Miranda's words, tone, and body language, trying to determine whether her behavior was purely professional or if it hinted at something more personal. The uncertainty added both intrigue and discomfort, leaving him mentally preoccupied and cautious. As the days passed, the invitations became more frequent, each with a professional pretext but a personal undertone. A quick strategy session here, a late-night data review there, all conducted with subtle warmth. Ethan felt the emotional tension grow, recognizing the challenge of balancing politeness, career considerations, and the flutter of curiosity stirred by Miranda's attention. He also worried about perception among colleagues. Even though the meetings were framed professionally, Ethan knew how easily appearances could be misinterpreted in a corporate environment. Maintaining discretion while navigating the subtle personal attention became a constant mental exercise, forcing him to balance ethics, ambition, and emerging personal feelings. Despite the caution, Ethan couldn't deny the allure of the moment spent alone with Miranda. The conversations felt different from regular office interactions, more attentive, more engaged. He realized that the subtle invitations had shifted their dynamic, drawing him closer while challenging him to uphold professionalism, creating an emotional tension that was difficult to resolve. By the end of the week, Ethan reflected on the growing complexity. Miranda's subtle attention had introduced uncertainty, curiosity, and a hint of excitement into his otherwise structured work life. He knew he needed to remain vigilant and thoughtful, yet he also sensed that these quiet, nuanced interactions were reshaping the boundaries of their relationship in ways he hadn't anticipated. Ethan couldn't help but notice the subtle changes in Miranda's behavior over the past week. Her glances lingered just a moment too long, and her smiles carried a warmth that seemed personal. Even during meetings, she found ways to engage with him directly, asking for his opinions in a tone that suggested more than mere professional interest. The signals were confusing, and Ethan felt a tension he couldn't easily dismiss. In the break room, casual conversations with Miranda felt charged with a hidden meaning. She would tease lightly, make jokes that touched on shared frustrations, and linger near him longer than necessary. Ethan tried to maintain his composure, responding with polite humor, yet he felt a growing internal conflict. The lines between professional and personal attention were becoming increasingly blurred. While he worked diligently on his tasks, Ethan found his mind wandering. He questioned whether Miranda's behavior was intentional or if he was reading too much into normal workplace interactions. Every compliment, every prolonged discussion felt loaded, and he struggled to separate admiration from something more intimate. The uncertainty made each encounter feel like walking a tightrope. Ethan's thoughts also turned to workplace dynamics and potential gossip. He was aware of how colleagues could misinterpret even innocent interactions, and the last thing he wanted was to jeopardize his reputation. The mix of curiosity, attraction, and professional caution created a constant mental balancing act, forcing him to carefully navigate each meeting and conversation with Miranda. Despite his caution, Ethan couldn't deny the growing intrigue. There was something magnetic about the way Miranda engaged with him, focused, attentive, and slightly playful. He felt drawn to her energy, but reminded himself repeatedly that boundaries were crucial. Every subtle gesture or smile heightened the tension, making him question how far their interactions could go without crossing professional lines. Even during team meetings, Miranda's attention seemed to find him, her questions directed specifically at his insights, her encouragement more personal than usual. Ethan tried to remain focused, yet each interaction left him reflecting later, analyzing whether her behavior was meant to convey admiration, attraction, or simply reinforce his professional importance. The internal conflict intensified as Ethan reviewed his own feelings. He valued Miranda's attention, yet he feared misinterpreting signals, creating unnecessary complications. He wrestled with curiosity, respect, and ethical boundaries, realizing that each choice could influence both his career trajectory and the delicate balance of their professional relationship. By the end of the day, Ethan sat at his desk, exhausted yet mentally restless. Miranda's mixed signals had left him intrigued, cautious, and slightly unsettled. He understood that navigating this evolving dynamic required careful thought, patience, and self-control. The tension between attraction and professionalism had become a constant presence, shaping his every interaction with her. Ethan felt a subtle shift in the air as Miranda called him into her office late in the evening. The door closed softly behind him, and for a moment, the quiet was almost oppressive. Her usual composed demeanor carried an unexpected intensity, and Ethan sensed that this conversation would not be like the previous discussions. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken meaning, making his pulse quicken. Miranda's eyes held his with unwavering focus. "Ethan, I need to be honest with you," she began, her voice steady but softer than usual. "Your work tonight was incredible, but it's not just your professional skills I value." The words struck him unexpectedly, leaving a mixture of surprise and caution coursing through his veins. The directness was both thrilling and intimidating. He swallowed, carefully choosing his response. "I appreciate your trust and recognition, Miranda," he said, keeping his tone measured. Yet he felt the weight of her gaze, and the subtle inflection in her words suggested something more personal than admiration for a completed project. Ethan realized that this was a pivotal moment, one that could redefine the boundaries between them. Miranda leaned back slightly, her expression softening, revealing a rare vulnerability. "I've been watching how you handle pressure, your ethics, your dedication. It's rare, and I won't lie, I'm drawn to it in ways beyond work." Ethan's mind raced, balancing disbelief, intrigue, and a careful awareness of the ethical implications. The line between professional and personal had become unmistakably blurred. He considered the potential consequences of any reaction. Workplace relationships were fraught with complications, and he was aware of the risks if they crossed professional boundaries. Yet, the intensity of Miranda's confession and the honesty in her tone stirred emotions he hadn't anticipated. Ethan realized he had to decide quickly how to respond without compromising integrity or judgment. Ethan's heart pounded as he spoke, choosing his words carefully. "Miranda, I respect your honesty, and I'm flattered, but I need to ensure we maintain professionalism. This situation is complicated," he said, balancing honesty, caution, and his own emotional curiosity. The air between them was thick with tension, every word loaded with significance. For a moment, Miranda's expression flickered between amusement and seriousness, a knowing smile that acknowledged both the tension and the possibilities. She seemed to accept his cautious response, while hinting that her attention was genuine and persistent. Ethan understood that the dynamic had shifted permanently. There was no going back to simple professional interactions. As he left the office, Ethan felt a swirl of conflicting emotions, excitement, apprehension, and ethical awareness. He knew he had to navigate this delicate situation carefully, balancing his professional responsibilities with the unexpected personal interest of his boss. The turning point had arrived, and every decision from this moment forward carried weight, shaping both his career and the potential for something more. Ethan sat at his desk the next morning, the early sunlight filtering through the office blinds. The previous night's conversation with Miranda replayed in his mind, vivid and charged. He understood that a choice needed to be made, not out of impulse, but with careful consideration. Maintaining professionalism while acknowledging personal curiosity required balance, and he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He reflected on his career and the path that had led him here. Years of dedication, long hours, and a commitment to excellence had earned him respect. Yet this moment was different. It wasn't about completing tasks or exceeding expectations. It was about navigating the delicate intersection of professional boundaries and emerging personal interest, and the stakes felt higher than ever. Ethan considered his role as a single father, the responsibilities that extended beyond the office. Any decision had to account for the example he set for his daughter, as well as the stability he maintained for her. He knew that acting rashly could have consequences, both professionally and personally, and that patience and thoughtful reflection were essential in approaching the evolving dynamic with Miranda. He also thought about Miranda's honesty and the subtle ways she had expressed interest. The admiration she showed for his work was intertwined with personal attention that made him question his own boundaries. Ethan recognized that the situation was unprecedented in his experience, demanding self-awareness, emotional honesty, and a deliberate strategy for how to respond without compromising integrity. As the day progressed, Ethan engaged with his tasks with renewed focus, using his work as an anchor amidst the emotional complexity. Each interaction with colleagues reminded him of the professional framework he needed to maintain, while the memory of Miranda's words lingered, a quiet undercurrent of tension and anticipation. Balancing these two realities became a mental exercise in discipline and self-reflection. By late afternoon, he made a conscious decision on how to navigate future interactions. Ethan resolved to maintain professionalism while remaining open to understanding Miranda's intentions slowly, ensuring that any personal connection would evolve with respect, caution, and mutual understanding. It was a choice rooted in patience, ethical consideration, and self-awareness, acknowledging both curiosity and responsibility. Ethan reflected on his growth, both as a professional and as a single parent. He recognized the resilience, focus, and emotional intelligence that had brought him to this point. The experience underscored his ability to handle complex situations with composure, weighing personal feelings against career obligations, and preparing him for challenges that extended beyond mere tasks or deadlines. As the office emptied and the city lights began to twinkle, Ethan felt a mixture of anticipation and calm. The dynamic with Miranda had shifted permanently, introducing uncertainty, possibility, and subtle excitement. Yet he approached it with clarity, ready to navigate the evolving relationship with thoughtfulness, patience, and respect. Aware that the next chapter of his professional and personal life was unfolding before him.